I'm Jim Marushin, and welcome to Out of the Past, a series where the Martin County Historical Society focuses on local history. Today, I'm going to be talking with our guest, Frank Winzenburg, and we'll be speaking about the history of restaurants in our area. First, Frank, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
We've recently returned to Fairmont after being gone for about 35 years. We moved away in 1980. Before that, I was the business manager of the Fairmont school system. And when we moved from here, I began the job of Director of Business Affairs for the Wayzata School District. When I started at Wayzata, we were the 17th largest school district in the state of Minnesota, and when I left there, we were the 10th largest. So it gives you an indication of how much growth room they had in the school district there.
Sure. Frank, now you've been here for quite some time, and you've seen plenty of restaurants come and go over the years. Why don't you tell us about some of your favorites?
Oh boy, I don't know. I don't know if I'd term it as being one of our favorites or not, but I did compile a list here of restaurants that I recalled from the past.
Sure.
I would say that these typically run about 1940 to 1980.
Okay, sure.
The first one that I have listed here is Millie's Cafe. Millie's was located just down the block here, about a half a block. And interesting thing about Millie was that I remember he only had one arm.
Oh,
but you couldn't tell it by the service that he gave, because he gave wonderful service. And if my memory serves me right, I think that they didn't have tables there. It was just a counter service, very small restaurant. Then there was a Potter's Cafe. Potter's that was located on Main Street. I think the telephone office is where that Potter's was at that time.
Sure. Now, was there a difference between a cafe and a restaurant? I know the terms might be interchangeable today, but
I was pretty small at the time, so to me it was just, either one was just a place to eat.
Sure.
So I'd call Millie's a cafe, but if it was a sit-down, I'd probably call it a restaurant.
Okay.
Oh, and then another one that I recall, and it was right along a neighbor to this building. Well, that was Olander's hamburger shop. Reuben Olander owned that, and was put out a good product of hamburgers and malts. And basically that was the menu.
Sure.
But he did a good business. But he died, I would say, around 1940, and they had no children, so they just closed the doors and disposed of the business.
Sure.
Another one that I remember, it was across the street from the Mexican restaurant here, and across the street from the Opera House, and that was owned by a person by the name of Miles Jos, Kjos. And I'm going to mention sometime today about the fact that it's owned by certain people, but I don't recall the name of the restaurants.
Sure.
His is one that I don't recall the name of his restaurant, but he was well known for having a sour cream pancake, and it put out an excellent product, but it was just such a small building that he couldn't cater to very big crowds. The building is still there, but I believe it's empty at this time.
Sure.
Another one that was along this this row here, it was right across the alley from Millie's Cafe, and that was Burton's. And I'm not sure whether they had any sit-down tables for eating or not. It too was small, but they might have had a couple of tables there.
Sure.
Another one that I recall is Kurt and C. Smyers. They originally were located next to the theater, next to the, I think at that time it was the Lake Theater. And when the Lake Theater and the sweet shop burned down, they relocated to the West Blue Earth Avenue. And the sweet shop was located on Downtown Plaza, just down a half a block from the theater.
Okay.
I have a hard time remembering exactly when they changed theater names because originally it was the Strand Theater,
Yep.
and then it was changed to the Lake Theater.
Oh.
And it was the Lake Theater when the fire consumed most of the businesses in that block.
Sure. Now, Frank, we've talked about a number of different restaurants here. To me, it's surprising that we had so many restaurants here at the same time. Were they drawing a lot of people from out of town at that time, or kind of how did so many restaurants survive and exist at the same time?
I'm going to have to guess because I was pretty small then, but because I don't think a lot of people that lived in town went out to eat a lot.
Sure.
So probably they drew a lot of the farm people and maybe people from smaller towns around here.
Okay.
Okay, another one close by where we are now, it was on the corner of First Street and Downtown Plaza, ended up being City Hub. It started out by being the city drug, and it was owned by brothers, the Edwards brothers.
Okay.
The Edwards brothers' brother that was the pharmacist died, and they couldn't keep up the pharmaceutical business. So rather than sell it or change the name, they changed it to a City Hub from the City Drug. And then the one brother kept running it just as a restaurant and a novelty shop.
Sure. So that had been a pharmacy, and then they converted it over to a restaurant.
Right, yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, but there wasn't much conversion that was necessary in that case.
Oh.
Another one was near the Sentinel, and that was the Maid-Rite Cafe.
Oh, I don't think I've heard of that one.
People from Iowa, I think it was Iowa company, and people from Iowa would probably be more familiar with the Maid-Rite. I remember when we moved to the cities, there was a Maid-Rite Cafe fairly close to where we lived.
Oh.
And I was surprised at that time to see them because there weren't many that were north of Fairmont.
So was that excuse me? So was that sort of an early chain restaurant?
Yes, it was.
Sure.
And it's still in business today.
Oh,
as a chain restaurant.
interesting.
What I remember as being the corner cafe from the corner of 4th Street and Downtown Plaza. At that time, there was the Borchert gas station.
Okay.
And at the end of their little office was a small cafe, and that's what I refer to as the corner cafe.
Which corner was that on, Frank? Is that corner down there? We're talking about like the Congregational Church, what a lot of people might remember as the hardware store.
It was Katy Corner from the Congregational Church.
Okay, sure.
When I was going to school, it was owned by Harry Henricks. Harry's son was in my class in high school.
Okay.
So I knew it fairly well.
Sure.
Then after Harry and his wife retired, Corwin Duflo took over the business, and he had it for a number of years, and I think he just retired. Another one on Downtown Plaza was Searles Cafe. No, Searles Restaurant, because it was a fairly good-sized restaurant, and they had a lot of sit-down. They had a good local business, I would say.
Sure.
And
Would that be more akin to a restaurant we think of today, like a Perkins or a Beantown, those types of places?
Yeah, right.
Sure.
Yep. The Fairmont Hotel was just up at the end. Oh, it was across the street to the west from the old from Anderson's building, and they had served good breakfasts and dinners. And what they were particularly known for was their family Sunday dinners.
Oh.
And it was usually crowded for those dinners, and that was a dress-up affairs. People, of course, at that time dressed up differently than they do today. And when a family would go out to eat, all of the males would be wearing suits, tie, so forth, and the women would have on their best dresses.
What would the menu for a Sunday dinner like that entail when you're all dolled up?
Oh, I'd probably say a nice chicken dinner or a roast beef dinner or something like that, with all the works.
Mm-hmm. So Frank, a lot of that food sounds really good. What were the prices like in those days?
They sound pretty cheap by today's standards, because I think probably for $1.25, $1.50, you could get a really nice dinner.
Oh wow!
And the nice dinner probably also included a nice tablecloth, linen tablecloth.
Ooh, yeah. Eating in style.
I'll say.
Well, those are very interesting, Frank. Now, there must have been more downtown.
There are quite a few more, yes. People will probably remember a lot of these. There were Spike Gorham's, the Green Lantern, there's the Colonial Inn, Bergeson's, the Bus Depot, the G&W, the Iron Grill Cafe, McNulty's, Donut Shop, Koenig's, and Koenig's would also be referred to by the Ben Franklin store, too.
All right, now, Frank, out of the ones you just mentioned in that list there, one that stands out to me is McNulty's. That must refer to Jim McNulty, the baseball manager, right?
Yep, you're right. That's the reason it was called the Dugout.
Oh.
Jim apparently needed another additional livelihood, so that he opened up the tavern, and it was got a good customer participation there too.
Sure. Now, Frank, that's a very impressive list. That to me, that's very shocking that there were that many. Now, there's got to be a few more, right?
Yes. Yeah, there are a few more. One is called the Town Pump. There's also the Fairmont Cafe, Laurel's, Highland House. Actually, those are getting a little bit out west of downtown.
Sure.
There's the Edie's. I'd say that probably finishes the downtown restaurants.
Oh, that's a very impressive list. Now, Frank, on the ones you just mentioned there, one that I've heard about but don't really know a lot about is the Town Pump. Can you go on about that one a little bit?
The only thing I can tell you about that, Jim, is that it was located in Wallace's store.
Oh.
On the first level. So
sure.
Maybe it gave the ladies a nice place to stop to have lunch after they did their shopping at Wallace's department store.
Yeah. Now, Frank, that list, you must have done a lot of research on these, right?
Well, just memory, Jim, not research so much. It was just that I went down in my mind, I went down block by block and picked them out and wrote them from there.
Wow, that's very impressive. Well, thanks again, Frank, for sharing that with us.
You're welcome.
That entire list is just very long, very impressive, and to think that's only the downtown restaurants.
Right.
Yeah. Frank, would you honor us again by coming back and maybe telling us about the ones around the rest of Fairmont?
I'd be happy to do that. We've got an extensive list of those that were out in the rest of the town. Also, not as long a list, but it will be interesting to review those too.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I will be happy to come back and we'll hear about those another time. Frank, thank you so much for sharing your history with us today.
Yep, you're welcome, Jim. It was my pleasure.
Well, everybody, that's all the time we've got today. Tune in again to another episode of Out of the Past, and please join us at the Martin County Historical Society sometime. Thank you.